and welcome everybody. The idea is for today to have a panel talk about the underrepresentation of female coaches in high performance hockey. I'm glad I mentioned that word correctly because underrepresentation is a difficult word for me to pronounce, but it's an important topic. And the reason why we are talking about this topic today has got everything to do with the coach that you are seeing on top there is Joy Jouret, who is a coach here in Belgium. She's played for the national team for many years. She went into coaching, coached both national teams in youth in Belgium, coached both men and women's team in the honor division here in Belgium. And she is finishing up a master degree into psychology, and this was the topic of her master's thesis. So that caught my eye, and I thought, okay, maybe this is a good topic for us to talk about. So the other coaches on the panel, so that I have to talk as little as possible today, we have Katrina Powell, a head coach for Australia, the women's national team. We have Janneke Schopman, former coach for the USA, former coach of India, and today coaching the national women's team of Germany. And we have, last but not least, Veronica Scott, Australian who has had the experience of both playing and coaching in Australia, in Europe, and who is now the director of hockey at Colorado Academy in the US, which is a country with a little bit more different situation when it comes to women's coaching. So happy to have your experience on that topic as well. The topics we're going to talk to you today about are what's the current situation of female coaches in high performance hockey. First, we have Joy paint that picture of the landscape of today. And then we're going to talk about what could be possible solutions to make this better. First, what can coaches do themselves? Then we're going to talk about, okay, from the domestic situations, what can clubs do? What can schools do on a domestic level? Next up is what can national associations do with their national team programs on the international scene? And obviously, there's also a role to be played by governing bodies like the FIH on a global scale, or Euro Hockey or Hockey Asia on the continental scales. And finally, we're going to take it back to the individual responsibility of what can we do to make this better. Okay, the idea obviously is to, first let's start with this one. What's the current situation, recent shifts or trends in that regard? So Joy, without already going into the possible solutions and fixes just yet, your research highlights the significant underrepresentation of female coaches across the sport globally, and in the specific context of high performance field hockey. What does the current landscape look like from your perspective, and have you observed any recent shifts or trends? I think you are on mute. Is that possible?
Yeah, I had to start with the mute situation.
Absolutely. I will do the same.
No, it's a big question, so there's a lot to say. If we picture the current landscape, it's not very positive. If you look at the statistics, you see across all sports and for many years that we have a clear and significant underrepresentation of female coaches. And it means in all sports, in all different sports, all different disciplines, with of course some differences between traditionally sports that are traditionally linked to women, like gymnastics or something like that. Then we would see more female coaches. But for most sports, the situation, we go around 20% of female coaches. And if we're talking about high performance sports, and then we go between 10 and 15% of female coaches. So when you compare to all the advancements, all the advances we had as women for the last decades, and you compare it to the situation of female coaches, we see that there's really a systemic problem that female are not going through the system for the moment. And if you look at the numbers here, the facts and figure that was made by the Olympic Committee, International Olympic Committee, you see that we stagnate. There's no movement. We stay chronically very low, and there's no significant augmentation in 4 years. It doesn't go higher. So the picture for the moment is not really positive. Of course, there are initiatives that are taken, but not enough, and sometimes, most of the time, underfunded. But the problem is, and we're going to see it on the next slide, is that the situation is linked with different layers of barriers. And that's an article that I encourage anyone interested in the subject to look at. It describes the environment, ecological environment of a female coach, and the different levels of barriers she can encounter. The first circle is made of individuals, levers or barriers. The second one would be the interpersonal, the third one organizational, and the third one, well, societal one. And you see that in those different layers of lasagna, you have things that do influence the access to a high performance position. I thought that was really strikingly interesting to have that picture in one diagram. And it's also interesting because every country has a specific context. And that's why I'm so happy of all the legends present on the panel today, not only because they are legends, but also because we come from different contexts. And it's interesting to have their perspective on how do they live those 4 layers. So that's the actual context. And just to finish with, the evolution now, well, that's my personal opinion. I don't have a crystal ball, so I cannot predict what will happen. But you see on the political scene that the backlash we're living now with, for example, the Trump administration cutting off research about inclusion and diversity, that's not a good signal. It had already had concrete impact, and it's not a good signal for the next 4 years. So yeah, sorry, it's not a very positive starting point, but so I leave the floor to my colleagues to comment on the question.
Yeah, so also for the panel then, and maybe let's start with Katrina here. Is also without going into possible solutions already and possible fixes just yet. So what are your experience regarding this from the beginning of your coaching career, and what were some of the challenges that you faced, Katrina?
Well, I mean, that's reflected in Australian high performance areas across the board as well, not just Olympic sports. For us here in Australia as well, the underrepresentation, not just in coaching, but in sport leadership generally. And so coming through for myself, I didn't have any female coaches. I just didn't have any. There weren't any role models. There wasn't any. Well, it's definitely if you can't see it, you can't be it. And there wasn't any of it to see in Australia. Certainly through the state that I came through, and at the national level as well. So. Yeah, it isn't just coaches in Australia, it's also administrators that also support women in those roles and help to employ them in those roles. So yeah, there's a broader picture, I think, as well, rather than just coaching.
Janneke, your thoughts?
Yeah, the irony is I did have a female coach actually when I first started playing at Rotterdam, and I think she was a good coach. She was also a former national team player, so maybe also tells a little. My experience is actually more interesting that when I started to venture out, maybe do I want to coach? I always wanted to coach, but do I want to coach high performance? It was actually reflected quite strangely by my teammates. So I had a lot of teammates that said, well, what do you mean you want to coach internationally or you want to coach in the hoofdklasse? I think I'm not sure I want to be coached by a woman. And I was like, okay, that's also interesting, right? That, you have teammates that just are used to having a male coach and just want a male coach maybe for that reason. And then I asked this player and I said, well, so you don't want me as your coach? Well, you're fine. And I was like, what does that mean then? Because that also makes very little sense in it. But that always, yeah, I think without going into solutions and stuff, it's perception maybe. You know, a lot of people don't know any better. I spoke to one of the German players that I first met, and she said it's interesting. There's so few female coaches in Germany at the highest level. I don't think some of the players I'm coaching, I have never had a female coach.
Veronica, the thoughts that you had and the experiences that you have from Australia to Europe to the US.
It is interesting. I, like Janneke, I started with strong female coach and manager, and we had so much fun. I remember like under 13, 14, and that was one of the things I think that kept drawing me into playing representative hockey, was these great coaches. But then that was at our county level, I guess you would say, like our city regional, and then you make the next level, and then it went into males. So you had the females at the base and who was fun and supportive, and then you sort of was a step up. And I do recall we had one year I was so excited to be coached by this particular male coach, and then the policies came in to try and get more females in, and they took him away. And unfortunately, that was a negative experience because the replacement, who was female, and she was good, but we were all wanting him. And she only lasted 1 year, I think, because there was already a little bit that, as Janneke said, the perception that we want to be coached by men maybe at the higher level. But it was hard. It was hard for her too, because the way that she was put into the position wasn't successful, I think, as well. And then from there on, I really, it's all been males. I've not had a female coach until I came to the United States, and then it flipped where it was all females in the D1 college system.
Okay, let's move on a little bit to possible solutions, possible fixes, and then I usually.
And if I may, before
yes.
We move to solutions, because what was said by my colleague there, it's so interesting, and it's linked to what is said on the next slides. So if we're looking at the psychological aspect of what you were saying, it's exactly backed up, but it backs up what you're saying. So it's really using the psychology lens now to look at the things you have said. So if you look at the first step, we had legal advances, but there's still biases and pitfalls that are structural. Katrina, you were talking about the administration and the leadership in general. Indeed, it's structural, it's systemic. We talked about the multifaceted problem that involves personal, but also interpersonal, and the organizational, that's the leadership. We're talking about stereotypes, that the perceptions of both female and male have on coaches. What do they expect? And what is interesting is that for Ashby position role, it involves being in sports, in technology, and leadership. And those three things are linked to male stereotypes. So it's fed by stereotypes that we all share, because stereotypes are used by everyone. It's a very strong dynamic that all human beings share. We know in those three phenomena that it's mainly linked to male stereotypes, male traits. And so if you go to the next slide and we look a little bit closer with occupational and vocational psychology, we're talking about the glass ceiling. You all know that saying, the glass ceiling, that you can only go to a certain level and you will be stopped at some point. So, and that's what we see in hockey, that in many countries you will have female coaches, but up to a certain point. And once you reach the high performance, etc., the numbers drops that drastically. So we know that gender is a super powerful organizer of the professional world. And we know in the sports world, but in most domain, that we have both a horizontal segregation and a vertical segregation that makes it very, very, very hard for women to reach the high positions. For the
Can I
sure.
ask or interrupt? The interesting thing is, I did work as a civil engineer for a long time as well, which is of course also a job associated with more men.
Yes.
And I did, at one point we have a female leadership course, which is already interesting, right? Because there's no male leadership course. So Heijmans felt it necessary to have a female leadership course, which actually was really good. So they recognized that there was this underrepresentation or whatever it was. What I thought was so interesting when I was talking to my female colleagues is that what they perceived as maybe a glass ceiling, I never had that experience. And when I started reflecting on it, it had more to do, I think, with how I was in my job and who I was as a person. And I think because of the sport, because of the high performance, at that time I was still a player, I was like, you know, I'm not necessarily afraid here to give my opinion, to say what I think, because I wasn't dependent on the job. I wasn't dependent on, just doing that. And I think that sense of security makes a lot of males potentially also, that I don't know, but a lot of them then said, yeah, but we can't say the things we want to say because we're afraid that it has consequences. And those consequences have a negative impact on my future here, and I don't want to risk it. And I think that's the very interesting part of this discussion as well, because are we not doing it because we don't get the opportunity, or maybe we do get the opportunity, but we're actually afraid of the consequences and how we are seen if we fail?
It's super interesting, and it's very true. I just told you I'm finishing my master's thesis now, and it's about the application of a theory that was applied in North America, and to see if it's fitted for Belgium. And this theory is social cognitive career theory, and what it does, it analyzes the athlete's perception into a potential career of coaching. And we saw that this theory is very fitted for minorities in certain domain. So it's really suited for the STEM, so all the work, engineer, for example, mathematics, physics, where or technologies where women are underrepresented. They use that theory because what it does, it look at the female's perception on things. So if I try to be a bit clearer than I was, it's like trying to understand how female athletes are looking at the diagram we saw previously on with the different circles. What is their perception of those circles? So it's another layer of that exists, but we also have to take in account how athletes or female coaches are looking at it. So it's an extra layer. And perceptions are indeed feeded by our socialization, the way we've been brought up, the culture we live in. All these things are feeding how we perceive things.
Mm-hmm. Another point to make with the slides, Joy, or do we go on to the next chapter of possible solutions and fixes?
I'd be interested to hear Veronica, because you're in the States, and we know that in the States it's another world compared to Europe, for example, in terms of athletics and the way they deal with sports. Do you notice, you've been in different continents, do you notice differences on how it's handled, this question?
It's when you said before about the perceptions, I do think so. When I first came here, I worked for a college for one season and then was looking in to see if I wanted to go into the college role and talk to a few different college coaches I met. There are a lot of young women who play in the college, like they play D1, they love their sport and they want to continue. And so if they've had a good role model in their college coach, a lot of those players have gone on to then coach themselves and staying in the sport. It's not, and there's two pieces of it. One is, yes, they love the sport and they want to continue. one part of it is that they don't have another option. We don't have a good club system here. So for them to stay involved in the sport that they love, the only role is potentially in a coaching capacity. However, on the positive side, the other positive side is that you do get these great young women who are saying, you know what, I've had this great experience, or I think there could be changes. So as yourself and Janneke experienced, so then how can we help implement those changes or become a coach? But I don't see many women in the next role up. So as Katrina was saying before, we don't have, so our athletic departments, I know very few females in those roles that are essentially the hiring positions.
Yeah, I was going to say, because I've been in the US also for a long time. I think actually, in an ironic way, male coaches are actually having a struggle in getting the head coach job in college hockey in the US, because they will having maybe the better qualities or the more experience, but they'll be looked at, no, we always have female coaches and we feel like this program needs a female coach. So some of the struggles I think we might have in Europe, they're also flipped in the US, male, female, like, especially in field hockey, I would say.
Agreed.
I really like what you, sorry.
No, sorry. I just heard from somebody yesterday who there's a female coach potentially thinking she's going to retire in the future. And she said, I couldn't see that I would hand this on to a male coach. It should be a female, even though she has male staff working for her.
Yeah. And you bring up a very, very, very important point, that what we're talking about here is inclusion and diversity. And of course, we are talking about women now because it's a certain topic, it's a certain phenomenon that we're saying. But the real point is, how can we include and making sure that we have diversity in our staff, that we have diversity in our sport and our leadership. And it goes way further than male, female. That's one little aspect of it. It's about how can we include everyone based on their talent. And that's a very important point that we have to make. Just in this debate on male, female, I want to emphasize the fact that it's not against men. We said it 100 times over and over. We need men with us. We need people. We need allyship. We need to work together. It's not to exclude; it's to include, and that's really the dynamic we want to explain. It's really about how can we work better together. So that goes back to inclusion and diversity in general. It's how it should be talent based. That's the main.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and saying that, maybe Katrina has a similar experience, but my experience being a female head coach is actually quite nice to have male assistants as well, and to have that mix of it's best fit, but it's also you need the different perspectives. And for me, I've sometimes had an all-female staff. That was funny in a way, I thought, because that doesn't happen that often. But I always think what worked best for me in my experience was that you have that blend where you fit and mix and match. And I think for myself as a player in the national team, it was the same. When we had a male coach, well, we had a female manager, and then people can say, yeah, that's a female role. Well, maybe, but she actually was a former player and she played a very important role. So I don't know, Katrina, if you have a similar view.
Yeah, I'm all for the diversity of what you have in any team. Then diversity plays a big role in how you perform. So yeah, it's I've had a mixture of male, female. Same with physical prep staff as well. Managers mostly female. I just think that helps in terms of approachability and the requirements that females might want on tour rather than having a male. Not to say that a male couldn't actually do the job, it's just then comfort with discussing particular things with a male manager, but diversity through the whole group will allow you to have that anyway. I was interested to ask Joy about the self-belief piece, because there's the perception on what happens, by the female and how they see the circles and the situations. And I saw quickly on your slide that there's been that self-belief thing, and I'm just of the opinion that women just don't put themselves out there as much as they should, not in a kind of a character way, but backing themselves to do a job, whereas men will just throw them, oh yeah, I can do that, that'll be fine. And women want to have already done it, know they can do it before they commit to it, or someone might tap me on the shoulder. But actually the best way to learn is to jump in and do. And I just think we're probably a little bit less likely to do that.
Yeah, that's a very good question. Thank you for asking. There's two elements that are really important, at least in the theory I was working on. You have what we call self-efficacy, self-belief, self-efficacy. So how good you think you are in this competence, and result outcomes. What you think you're gonna have, what kind of results you expect to have if you enter this career. And you see that both these elements are central in influencing the potential interest of our athletes. So we see it has a direct influence and it has an indirect influence on the potential interest. So the way you perceive your competences and the way you perceive how well you can do in this job will influence the way you are likely to take on this job. Why we see the story you were telling, we heard a lot that men just go for it. If even though they meet 7 of the 10 criteria, they will go for it. If 10 have female have 9 out of 10, they're not gonna go for it. It's also, it can be linked to two things. I don't know if you heard the phenomenon of tokenism. So you're the only one. So you're the token, you're the only one in a certain domain with a lot of exposure. So if you are failing, you would be the example confirming that your type shouldn't be in this area. That's tokenism. So that puts a lot of pressure on the shoulder. And there's another phenomenon that we describe in psychology that it's called the stereotype threat. It means that you're unconsciously or consciously are aware that there is a stereotype about one of the group you belong to, and that if you're one way or the other, you are reminded of this stereotype about your group, it will influence your competences because you are aware that people are already judging you on that stereotype and that you might be confirming this stereotype. And it has been proven through research that if you just remind once someone of a certain group they belong to, it has a direct influence on the performance they're doing right after, the performance drop. So there's many ways to explain why female are maybe less daring, less bold to take on jobs, and that's something we have to address because it's a reality. So it's nothing good or bad, but it does exist for many reasons, and that's something we have to address in order to have politics that are transparent enough, open enough, inclusive enough, so people do put their application in. Female put their application forward.
Is that what we call the imposter syndrome?
It's linked. It's linked, but again, the imposter syndrome, you have many males that are also have the imposter syndrome, but it's also, that's one phenomenon that could also exist. It's when you believe that you don't have the competences necessary to fill in the job.
Okay. Can we move on to then possibly the first possible solutions and fixes that then could come from sorry, not this one, but this one. What should the female coaches do themselves? So in my experience, change always starts by looking into the mirror and asking yourself what you can do yourself. So what should women coaches do themselves to get ahead and be considered for high performance coaching roles? Maybe start with one of the panel, Veronica, maybe you?
Hi, I think just getting involved is the first step. So putting yourself out there and taking some risks or taking some challenges. I do think the FIH is doing a good job in terms of their coaching education piece. And that's how I've become involved now myself, just doing some the level I'm doing now, my level 4, but just getting it out there and getting involved in getting educated. And then that's allowing me also to network a little bit and to see what's available, where I can fit in potentially. And also it is a bit about the network and getting known. I mean, it still is in a way a boys' club, and you need to get yourself out there and don't be afraid to just put yourself out there and see. And my experience through what I'm going through is really positive. I've got a great mentor. I'm getting good feedback, and I feel I'm growing and doing okay.
Mm-hmm. Katrina, your thoughts?
One of the best things that I did in terms of looking in the mirror is to be really good at reflecting and your emotional intelligence and knowing who you are, what your values are, how that impacts your behaviors. So understanding yourself a little bit more goes a long way to making you a better coach. I think what it also did for me was allow me to use my strengths. You know, that whole, well, I was mostly coached by males, but that style of coaching, though successful, doesn't work for me. It's not authentic me. And so I think the better you understand yourself, the better coach you will be. Doesn't matter the sport, doesn't matter what the technical or tactical aspects are. We're about improving people. And so those connections, those relationships, how you get your message across, how you want people to behave in your group, but also play within your team. I do think you do start with yourself, as every coach absolutely should, and then you back yourself, and you know your strengths and you know your weaknesses. There's the diversity in the coaching group as well, which has their strengths, maybe some of your weaknesses. But I think that understanding who you are, your values, where that comes from, and why those things are important to you will help you to get the most out of your athletes.
Mm-hmm. Janneke, your thoughts?
Yeah, maybe along similar lines. I think maybe if I look at myself, I love coaching. I loved coaching when I was younger. I started maybe when I was 16 or 17. That was kind of my part-time job. When I moved to Rotterdam, I started coaching with our manager of the First Ladies team, and I was her assistant. And then when I was, I think, maybe 22 or something, I was coaching our under 16 team. And I always did it. And I think maybe knowing that I liked it, I actually had not a fight with my father at some point, but I was always working and coaching because I didn't think coaching was working. And then similar as what Katrina said, is like, what do you want to do? What do you love doing? I love coaching. And yeah, it's scary because I think the job in itself is scary because I came from a playing career where I was always feeling a lot of pressure. I was always nervous. So there was a lot of stress in this job. Becoming a full-time coach, is that what I want? But yeah, I wanted that. I loved it. I wanted to see, can I do it? And then, thinking I have the strengths or the qualities to do it. I know my weaknesses. And then I guess it comes down to me to I really love doing it. So why don't I make it my full-time job? And then let's see if it works.
Mm-hmm. Joy?
No, I feel like we're really blessed to hear all these these fantastic women explaining how they see it, and I'm drinking their words. For me, it's the same. It's the self leadership and authenticity we talked about. Who am I? What do I want to bring? What's my mission? What's my vision? How do I see things? And there to bring that to the world. And of course it's not going to work every time, but if you don't try it will never work. So it's throwing yourself out there. And it's also, we talked about self-efficacy and self-belief. It's also to know your worth and to look at things in that manner as well, because you belong there. You're not a guest in hockey. You know what you're talking about, so you belong to this world, and you better bring something. And the other part that was mentioned from for the three of you was the mentorship part. If you have someone that is going along with you and explaining to you and asking questions and sharing the experience, that's such a nice way. And it doesn't matter if it's a female or a male. It's just someone you can count on, and that you can see in his or her eyes that you're worth it, that you have something special. That's really important as well, I think.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, little belief can go a long way, can't it, Joy? Like, that's not just from yourself, about yourself, but also what you feel from others around you. I had a coach, a male coach, that helped me a lot. But I thought I'd highlight then the difference between Janneke and my paths, to touch on what Veronica said, which is, when I was playing, I just thought I could never do that. Like, I can't do that. Like, what? And the coach I'm talking about is Rick Charlesworth, and so obviously he's very well respected, and an amazing hockey coach. And you just go through going, oh, well, I can't do that. That's, there's this picture of head coach that you can never live up to. You can't emulate that. So I just never had it on my agenda as something that I would do, especially when I was younger. And it wasn't until I was starting to think about retiring and then actually giving back. It started as that grassroots kind of, well, hasn't this been a fantastic journey? How lucky am I to have played for Australia, to go to the Olympics? How do I give back? And it felt like, well, I've done my apprenticeship in hockey. Like, coaching seems to be a really good way to actually give back. And then, so from what Veronica said, it's like, oh, it's doing this thing, then doing the next thing, then educating, stepping into a space, having someone that believes in you and will help to educate you, not just on the field, but off the field, about integrity as well, about honesty and authenticity, and how to actually show up as a coach, care, and how important care about your athletes is, and passion for the role that will come across. But yeah, then it grows on you. And I love being a coach, even though it wasn't something that I ever thought I would get to do. And coaching the Hockey Roos is the job of a lifetime for me. And so I might have missed that had I not had a couple of people believe in me and a couple of opportunities to step into a space that became my pathway to where I am now.
Mm-hmm. You all talk about the role of mentorship, and I think that's a very important one, not just for women coaches. It's all around very important. Are you actively mentoring others right now yourself, or is that more of, you have to have a little bit of more space between you and your coaching career to be doing that, or can you do this as an active coach at the highest level, be actively mentoring young coaches coming through? Janneke?
I think it's a difficult question to ask, because I would say I'm not putting it out there, oh, I'm here to mentor you, although I would be open to it. But I've done, some former players in the US, even in India. I've always said, look, if you want to start your coaching journey, feel free to ask. Similar with my staff in India, I'd like to think at least that I've mentored them when I was there, because you help them along the way. I do that with some of the coaches now that will call me and have a question about a certain situation. Maybe I should do it more, but it's more of a natural thing how it happened. And I think, it's something that I enjoy doing, but not something that I'm, I don't have 10 people that I mentor or something.
Mm-hmm. Katrina?
Probably a little bit less formal rather than formal. I've got a coach emperor, the male coach that I'm supporting, and a couple of other spot things for a couple of females throughout the country. Because we're busy traveling, it's hard to really formally mentor over a number of years, but yes, informally, there's a couple of coaches in Australia that I regularly chat to. Yeah.
Veronica, is that different in the US system, where obviously you are more on one spot than an international coach traveling around the world, and you also have a lot of young females who, as you said earlier, don't have a pathway after their playing career and maybe could be mentored into this?
And that's exactly what's happened now. So because I am in one spot, so that's very helpful. I also have 12 people who work under me, so I supervise, and then through that I've developed more of a mentorship role for them. Particularly, I did have 3 of my former athletes. So when I first came here 10 years ago, they've gone to college, they've graduated, and they've come back to work at the school in the educational piece, or in the coaching role as a side job. So that's been great. So they've been coming back, and now I'm feeling I can mentor them to help them give back to the sport. And I'm just trying to think. I'm guessing yes, that in the Division 1 that I've seen, there is that mentorship in terms of if I know a couple of girls who played for a D1 coach, and then they've gone to work at another college, but they'll always come back and do the camps at that first university that they went to, and the relationship with their former head coach is really strong. And I see some of those former head coaches being a really good mentor. So it's really positive to see.
Joy, your thoughts on this? Are you mentoring?
I love to hear. Sorry?
Are you mentoring someone?
Yes. But I love from what was said now so far, this idea of giving back. I really like it. I think it's wonderful to hear that, because I think as players or coaches, we don't realize how much we can have an impact. And I'm talking there about transversal competences, not only hockey competences or athlete competences, but how can we help and support people as people. That's what I mean, that through sport we can reach them in a very specific way, in a very moving way, and a very transformational way. And I think it's duty is maybe a harsh word, but you have to share. Sharing is caring, and if you can, you have to take people under your wing and try to help them, whether it's formal or informal. But it has been proven through research many times how much mentorship and role modeling is a key element in self-efficacy and coaching outcome.
If we then maybe move on to the domestic clubs and schools. So what's your message to those in charge at your local club or at your local school, depending upon the country where you are, to work towards a more balanced coaching team in their organization? Joy, maybe start with you.
Yes. The first point would be to provide a clear and visible entry point. To make it clear that coaching roles are available for women. The second one would be to ensure and transparent recruitment practices. Most often we see, and that could be also on national level, informal ways of recruiting or promoting people. I think if it's clear and transparent for everyone, you will feel more comfortable to apply. So that would be an important one. Third one would be to offer training and coaching education that is also flexible, because we see in the statistics, at least I'm only talking for Belgium, that still women are spending way more minutes per week towards domestic tasks than their male counterpart. So in that way, to think about education maybe in a more flexible way than outside working hours, or so that should be also something, and create opportunities. That's really important as well. And we see it now that if we go back to the ecological model we saw with the different circles, then on the personal and interpersonal level, it has been a little bit better the last years. But now that we have people that are ready, they don't always have the opportunity to show what they collected. So it's also making sure they have concrete opportunities, as maybe first starting as assistant and then growing in more senior positions, but to give the opportunities to show what they have.
Mm-hmm. Janneke, what do you think that coaches of clubs or organizations should do?
I'm sometimes struggling because I'm not sure that the opportunities are not there. I'm not sure that there's always, people that want to do it, this full-time commitment of coaching, high performance, if we're talking about that specifically. But if I talk about lower level, Joy just made me think, I was talking about that female leadership course, but they are just, I think, more struggles that women typically encounter in leading than maybe males, to the point we were talking about self-belief or developing your personal skills. And perhaps that is something a club can pay attention to, or a national organization can pay attention to, and say, I'm not talking about an education of hockey, because hockey I already know. And to be honest, I did the coach education in Holland. That was really helpful. But at the same time, I played in national team. So technically, that wasn't really what I needed to learn. I needed more to learn to teach. And a lot of the courses that really helped me develop as a person, I actually did with my job and the company, because they gave me the opportunity to develop myself and to get to know myself better and my strengths better. That was unrelated with my hockey skills. So perhaps we have to look at the clubs and the national organizations, say, how are you going to be educated? And I think that's something really valuable. And a short example is that when I was working for USA Field Hockey, I joined the USOPC's program, which was National Team Learning Coaching Education Program or something like this. It was 3 years. It was with a lot of Olympic coaches, but you saw the same thing there. And it wasn't male, female, but there is no background in how to learn. So I think by providing opportunities, how do I learn, and make that really easily accessible, maybe that gives people more confidence about themselves to say, yeah, I'm ready for this. I can actually do this.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Katrina, Australian point of view?
Yeah, I think, well, same as sounds like Belgium. There, in Australia, both parents will work full time, but still the female is responsible for the majority of domestic and child care duties. So without being able to change the whole culture, which says, the man will take a little bit more responsibility for that and allow females to do a little bit more outside of a full-time job that then is coaching the local club as a mid-level, not high-performance coaching gig. But I do also think generally that we can look at the way work is structured. It's that man's world, work, going to the office. It was set up by men that then don't have that domestic side to take care of. So I think things are changing. There is way more work from home now. COVID helped a lot, but I don't think women's roles have changed at all. So being open to what the coaching space could look like for a female would help a lot. There's no problems bringing children here. There's no, what times work for you for coaching? Can we have online debrief sessions? I think the workspace, the coaching space, how we run our teams could be changed to fit a coach, rather than, here's what we do as a club. We train here and we do this and we do that, and we need a person to fit this. How about we're fitting the coach and the woman that then has the majority of the domestic and child rearing duties, so that it is more accessible to women.
Veronica, I guess in the US, when I remember from our last talk that we did at the hockey side, you told me that coach education from the schools is pretty good, well organized there. So what's the American perspective?
So I'm really blessed where I am, that as Janneke said, we sometimes don't need to really know the the X's and O's, like we know the technical, but we need to know the other piece, the interpersonal. And my school hires a sports psychologist. They come in and do a big presentation, like it's a weekend clinic just about, and it's with a lot of other people. They just use our school to base, but just about how to be a good coach, like what it is to take to be a coach. So the coach educational piece for all sports, not just for field hockey. So that we're really blessed. And that's an organization and they travel a lot so I know that other people are also using them. I think also on Katrina's point about the taking into account like the domestic piece of it, and I even know our scheduler who's male, sometimes they will just reschedule games. I'm going, can we take into account that my coaches are female? They have to be home at this point of time to put kids to bed. We can't be playing a 7 p.m. game. But we're so eager to get the games for the kids, we forget about the coaches and what their roles and responsibilities outside their coaching life is. So I think if we can have a bit more understanding and flexibility and respect. My final piece here that I see is still the inequity in terms of the salary. And I just read an article yesterday about a college coach. The female coach at the sport was going to get paid $15,000 if they won the national championship. The male coach, different sport, but equal, was going to get $85,000 if they won the national championship. So that inequality is still there, I think, for the salary piece as well.
Yeah. Joy, any thoughts from the academic perspective on this?
Well, yeah, I was just reading statistics about equal pay. And indeed, it's a major factor for if you do the same job for 50% less, it has an impact on your daily life and on your and on how much time you have to give to have the same amount of money. I was reading, but it was for athletes. It was up to a difference of 80% in salary for female and male counterparts. That's in Belgium. I guess every country is different, and that would be the extreme. So not all sports would be like this, but the most extreme was 80% difference in salary. So indeed, it is still a reality in 2025. It's something you have to take in account, and it's something also that you consider when you're thinking about a position, because it's something that is widely known. So that's a criteria you know when you're taking up a position, and it has an influence or not, but it is a reality that it still exists for the moment. So we were talking earlier on about the necessity of transparency for recruitment and promotion. It should be the same about salary. Yeah? When you're working with formal organizations, they should be accountable for that.
Yeah, and in terms of that, the pay piece, I don't know about anywhere else, but in Australia, we do have plenty of female coaches. They're just volunteer. You know, they work grassroots. They do all of the underpinning programs, a lot of the heavy lifting, and then once you start to get into the paid roles, then men start to take over. So there's a high performance piece to our discussion today, but it's not because there's a lack of female coaches. It's often the opportunity, the bias, and the difficult circumstances from a domestic side of things about taking on roles that are full on in high performance.
If we move it up to another level, but still on a domestic level, when we're talking about the national associations and the high performance programs in your country, so for national teams, what should these national associations and the high performance directors do to help advance more female coaches? Janneke, maybe you.
Yeah, I don't know. It's difficult. I mean, I worked actually in high performance, junior high performance in the US, and then I was actually the junior high performance manager, for the lack of a better word. And there are plenty of coaches, and it is a volunteer job, and we had a lot of female coaches, and I think they still do. then going to India or going maybe back to Holland. I don't know. I feel like it's more what Katrina said. And if I look at some of my former teammates, or I look at, national associations and jobs within the national association, sometimes it's not transparent. So that's the first thing. I think sometimes the jobs are just appointed. I remember that I was actually the assistant for the under-21 team, and everyone thought I would be the head coach of the under-21 team in Holland. And I didn't even get an interview. And it was only until I told them that I was going to go and coach in the US that some people from the KNB wanted to have a conversation, which was really good. And they had this whole conversation and reasoning why I wasn't going to be the under-21 coach. But in a way, it feels weird to be skipped over when you're a former national team player. You love to coach youth hockey, and you're not even asked to have an interview. And I think that's a big part of it. I think where a lot of females in potentially Holland might have an opinion about this. I know that I do. And I think in relation to that, from some of my teammates also, they don't really want it because it's too much. And then you come back to the domestic and, having another job and having a good education and having, it's the other job. And it doesn't pay enough to make it a full-time job. And then they're like, then I'm not going to do it.
Mm-hmm. Katrina, from Australia, in the point of towards national teams coaches, national associations, what should they do?
Yeah, look, we've got a women's coaching group that's run by our lead pathway coordinator in Australia, and that is enabling those coaches to work together, but to have opportunities that they might not have had otherwise. So there's a piece that Hockey Australia are working on really well. I've been aware of a process that sugar, there aren't any females that we're interviewing in this process. What have we missed? What's gone wrong here? And they're aware, certainly mostly through the women's side, so not through the men's side, which also should be just as open about making sure that there is a representation of female coaches. And some of the state bodies are working hard in that space. Plus the board, I know the board of Hockey Australia is really aware of that as well. The AIS, the Australian Institute of Sport, they've done a lot of research similar to Joy's around the underrepresentation of coaches and executives and leadership within sport in Australia. And I'm not sure we found the right solution yet, and we've been stuck here for a little while without much change as yet that's been seen. But we're still hopeful and still working towards a more diverse high-performance system in Australia.
Mm-hmm. Joy, what do you think that should be the role for national associations and high-performance directors in this pathway?
Well, on a very pragmatic approach, I think that you're funded by your government in order to bring the sport to the highest performance. You should be accountable for how your methodology, and therefore it goes back to the transparency and in promotion and recruitment. Because if you hire on transparent criteria, you will hire the person that is the best suited to the job, no matter if it's a female or a male. It doesn't matter. It's the person that is the best suited. But that accountability is in Belgium not present. And I find very unfortunate to hear in Janneke's story, it's in psychology you call that the rubber wall. So you have the glass ceiling, you have the rubber wall, so we have many different expressions. And that's no matter how many diplomas, how certified and how experienced you are, you're not taking into account, not having an interview for the job. And you're stuck in a certain position, and it's not that you can break the ceiling, it's you bounce back on the walls because you have everything that is required, but for a structural reason, a systemic reason, you don't have access So I think transparency would be normal, knowing that they're funded by governments.
Mm-hmm. Veronica, is it different in the US?
I think it is in terms of, well, at the moment we have a male head and there's 2 female and 1 male assistants. So at least there are some females up there. I do think in the States, one of the issues is that we have our more experienced coaches are college coaches because we don't have that club background. So they get their experience and then they're working to be the head coach of their college. So I don't know what exists if there's potential, and maybe there is because one of our assistant coaches is also a college coach, that she can step out of her college role, potentially maybe in any downtime that she can find, and help do the national role and then come back to the college role. I do think from what I've talked to some people and they were saying with the colleges, at least you have a job, you have the comfortability of control over your program. It's a full-time job and you can have success with that as opposed to seeing if we can make it at a higher level only then to potentially not have success and then be out of work. So can I just stay with my experience and my college and continue to do a good job and to continue to grow just in my college space where I have that support network around me?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Another thing that always struck me as strange, especially in the US, where you do have a bigger source of female experienced high performance coaches. The male national team, to my knowledge, never got a female coach in the US.
Correct. Yeah, I don't know that either. I don't think, and I know they just appointed a couple of more males. I do know that there are some females that were helping in the high performance roles in technology pieces. So I know a couple of females who were doing the filming and so forth. But you're right. I don't know that they're even an assistant female at the moment with the men's side.
Yeah, but I think overall the struggle is, I think how you mentioned it correctly, Veronica, is like the college system is such a robust system where if you have your job, it's very unlikely you're gonna, lose your job, and it's a fun job and you can actually do a lot in that job and develop. It's very risky to take a national job because if it's not to be combined, which some jobs aren't, and then I would say the majority of the college coaches, yeah, it's kind of career suicide in a way, but because do you come back at that college in that head coach job? Probably not. So yeah, you're not going to give that away. And that's the struggle because a lot of them want to help always. I've never had a problem with volunteers. They all want to help. They all help the junior high performance. They come and they offer their time. They don't get paid. I met one of my friends back in Holland. She was there with the under 15 US team and she does it all for free, and she's traveling with them and she's spending all that time because she loves it. But yeah, she can't give up her job to do that.
Mm-hmm. No, makes sense. Makes sense. Another role is the one on a global scale, the one from FIH. What should FIH or also the continental federations take on as tasks to help advance more female coaches? Joy.
I'm lucky enough to work already in FIH education, and there are amazing people there. They're doing a lot in order to move the lines. So of course it's never enough in order to have more inclusion and diversity. But they're really busy with that, and they're really looking at this phenomenon, and they really try to address it. There are many things that they're trying to put in place for the education, to have specific programs to put in place. I think to put forward some success stories as well, to have role modeling. That's also something they could do, or they're already doing. And one idea could be also to create some sorts of labels, like gender equity labels, that they could offer to promote national federations that are doing well, that have a program that are addressing the problem. I think that could be also like a soft power type of tool. And on a hard power type of tools, it could also be linked to fundings, like what are you doing in terms of inclusion? Are you doing nothing? Then we look at the fundings, and we might reconsider what we think. So you have many tools, both on soft power and hard power, that could be put in place, but it's something they're really conscious about and that they really want to address. And what they do really well as well is they try to take in account the countries that have even less access, where women's rights are not as developed as in other countries. They really try to put that forward as well and to help those specific countries. So I think that's a very positive aspect of things, because I'm sorry, I'm really being the Smurf with the glasses explaining all these concepts. I'm really sorry. Last one. It's called intersectionality, and what it says that you belong to different social groups. So I'm a woman, I'm Belgian, I'm I'm blonde, blah, blah, blah. I belong to different groups, okay? And blonde was not a really good example.
No.
In different groups, and if you have stereotypes about certain groups that you belong to, actually those stereotypes just don't mix, they add to each other. So the more you belong to groups that have negative stereotypes about them, it adds up. So for any minority that you belong to, it will add up, and it will make it even more difficult for you to reach out in the position you're looking for. So that's also something really important to know about, and that hasn't been looked much yet in the research, but it's really emerging as something that we have to take in account, because that's more and more obstacles to climb over in order to reach positions for certain people.
Mm-hmm. Janneke, where do you see the roles for FIH and continental federations in this regard?
I think it's difficult. I think the EHF has actually done a really good job in the last couple of years, which is also really visible, and I think different in a way that, yeah, they try to push forward these female role models, because I do think female role models is something that helps. I agree with the FIH and their education programs. I think they're good. Other than that, for me, it's really hard to see. You could say that, when and it's always a question of time, but I do know that at one point in India, I think Alison and myself also did a joint interview, and this was not necessarily, well, it was partly about female coaching, which of course then is an interview for a newspaper, but you could argue that the FIH could ask the question. I'm not saying I have a lot of time, and Katrina might think now, oh my goodness, don't ask that question because I'm already too busy. But if we're in the Pro League in Berlin and we have a day off and there's an hour where there could be an interaction, that is stuff that I think, if it's in good conscience, I'm available, because it's not interfering with training times and meetings and whatnot, then maybe that's where you can also look to use us as role models when we're there, because that is very little effort in this case. For myself, I did it in the FIH Nations Pub, where I spent an hour or two with a coaching education course, which was not geared towards females, but you could easily do that too. And you share your experiences, and I think, yeah, that helps. I think people hearing from people that are in that position.
Yeah. Katrina, your thoughts?
I'm aligned with Janneke and what's been said in and around the education piece and the role modeling from FIH, really important. And yeah, just as we put athletes out there as heroes of our game and good, strong role models for hockey players around the world, that, yeah, there are coaches that can help with that, which I'm absolutely happy to lend my voice to. But I'd also like to see that FIH are on associations or national bodies around making sure that their national teams are treated equally as well. So there's a bit of inequality between men's and women's teams around the world. And I think the first place is to empower as many women as possible, and certainly having role models in coaches and administrative and executive roles within the FIH is fantastic. But we've also got women's issues around the world of nations that play hockey that we can also impact as well. Sorry to go really broad, but I don't like seeing inequality between the national teams either, and us sitting back and accepting that either.
Mm-hmm.
I actually have a good example of that because it's been like a thorn in my thigh. If you talk about the Junior World Cup between the men and the women, and I was coaching the Junior World Cup, and for years and years, there has not been video referrals at the Junior World Cup for the girls because we can't afford that. And because it's hosted by a country that doesn't want to pay for it, but the men have it because the country wants to pay for it. And then I'm like, but that's your problem, FIH. That's not the hosting country's problem. And you should make sure that the girls are treated the same as the boys. And yeah, that's maybe a very good example of what Katrina is just talking about. And that's also been very aggravating to me, to be honest.
Mm-hmm. Veronica, the US perspective from an Australian.
I think if the FIH can have more of a presence here, they don't really have a great presence here yet. That might also, many reasons, I guess. But I do think that the coach education piece, and I think as Katrina mentioned at the very beginning, if you don't see it, you can't be it. So getting that representation of females out there is so important.
That makes sense, absolutely. Let's bring it back then to the last bit of our panel talk here, the individual responsibilities. How can we convince more high-performance players, actual players today, to move into either umpiring or coaching with the same ambition to go for the top and not just coach their kids when they start playing? Joy.
Well, that was my master thesis. So
Yeah.
In Belgium, we notice, because we don't have much networking and formal support, because there are such a minority of female coaches. I don't know about the umpires, but I guess the numbers are comparable. That it relies, their decision and their interest really relies on their self-belief and self-efficacy. So I just want to be cautious with bringing that, because I don't want to put all the responsibility and the burden on the coach's shoulders, because that would be way too easy. If we go back to the ecological model with the different circles, we see that the personal individual circle is only one aspect of the thing. But we know it has an impact on the decision you want to take on this career or not. And the self-efficacy has impact on that. But we also see at the same time that the organizational and societal has also a huge impact. So of course it's up to the coaches, but it has to be a transformation, at least in organizational level. We need more support, we need more network, etc., to encourage these individual initiatives.
Mm-hmm. Katrina, how do we get more top players to become top coaches?
I have in my group a young player who wants my job.
Oh, wow.
Today
which already?
is absolutely fantastic. Look, maybe in a year, but she's got her career goals, she's got her ambitions, and so sometimes I find my discussions and feedback from a hockey sense back into coaching. She's already coaching in different circles. I've got another athlete that's coaching as well. So within the playing group, there are athletes that are interested in coaching, and if I didn't already think that my role as the head coach was really important to be a good role model, then I take that very seriously. But the other thing I take seriously is calling out things when I see it. those little biases. The women's game can be played before the men's game. But, that's just the list that comes out. It's like, why is every time the women's game before the men's game? I don't understand. Or, we've got coaching seminars and around the country, and a male coach questioned a female coach about, surprised that she was there because she was leaving her kids behind when he'd left his kids behind. And it was a genuine, you're not with your kids, you kind of, you found the time to come, it was just, what? But it was meant in the nicest way. So yeah, when you hear those things, I think you got to call out some of those biases that are just ingrained, that you have yourself, to try and check yourself. And be a real ally, to females in the pathway, in the network, and in sport in general.
Mm-hmm. Janneke, how can we get more top female players into coaching? Because in every group there will always be one or two who might be interested, that maybe not get there, but already interested as a player into moving into that role. But how can we get more of those groups interested in that top coaching role? Because we need more role models, obviously.
Well, maybe partly it is, and then I go back to formal education. I think it's very hard to combine a high performance job with a formal education in sports education, especially in Holland, because I did look at it, but I'm like, I'm not gonna do that and play hockey because I'll physically won't be able to do this.
Yeah.
I do know from some friends in England, they have done it. But I think that's maybe I'm making it black and white, but I look at, at Germany, I look at Holland. When I used to play, my generation, everyone is highly educated, I would say. They have good jobs. Coaching, a lot of them did, also for fun. And then there's a choice that you make to go professional. And I think if you look at it and you go earlier and say, okay, I go to university potentially, what is then an education I can do if I have interest in becoming a coach, or what I do after? Like, I think it's funny that Joy said I started doing psychology. It's something I thought of doing as well later in my life, because I thought that's something I can become a coach with. So it's now maybe talking to the people that are studying psychology. Have you thought about connecting that with the coaching? So I think if I look at my teammates or the players I have now, it's not a career path that they grow up with. So it again goes back to the beginning of this conversation. Does it become a career path? Okay, great. But what is then the steps I have to take to get there? And maybe then, the high performance stuff is actually a benefit, because then you have that experience and you know what it was like.
Maybe a sensitive one, but how's that like in India? You've had that experience in India. You've had a team of female top players in India. In India, hockey is considered to be a profession. Are there women there, and what should happen there to make more Indian top players move in that role?
I think, it's two ways. The best example I can give, I did some coach education there, and at one point I invited 15 coaches to come and observe for a week and talk to them, mentor them. There was one female coach, and we were talking about getting more experience, learning more. And India is fascinating, right? So she leaves her family and works, and she works really hard, and this is not an exception. This is normal. They are without their husband, they're without their kids very often. But what was interesting is, so I said, well, you can do the learning and the education when you go home. And then she was like, no, when I'm home, I'm the wife.
Oh, wow. Yeah.
Like, okay. So, and then she's expected to do the stuff that she's supposed to do. And that's not all. I know, for example, which is, one of the players that recently retired. I spoke to her when I left, and she's someone that wants to start her own academy in the state where she's from. She has all these plans, and she's not there yet. She just retired. So I texted her a couple of weeks ago. I said, what is your plan? And she's like, Jan, I'm just being right now. And I said, well, that's good for you. But I always said, look, if you need help or if you have a vision, because they do have a vision, they do know what it's like, but it's very hard because if she gets married, there is another layer that complicates the whole situation, but there are also a lot of women that are coaching there. But like I said, they leave their families, which is a very hard thing to do. And if you don't want that, then you're not going to coach. So it's very complicated.
No, it is. What can we learn from the US in this regard, Veronica? Because there it's happening more than we in the rest of the world are used to this.
I think one of the really positive things with the United States is the fact that being a coach is really seen as a reputable and really proud career path. So that's the first piece. I still think, as our other panelists mentioned, there's that lack of alignment though between getting a college education and what that can take me in terms of a coach. So, and we can't go to college to be a coach, but we can go to college to, as we say, do psychology or something else that's going to lead and support my coaching. But just the fact that being a coach is so well respected here is the first thing. I think that perhaps college coaches can support their athletes by helping them know, that the high performance roles are there and available. I think USA Field Hockey can do a good job in terms of the advertising that, maybe taking some of those college players and having them as interns over their off season, like during the summer, and being more proactive about that, because I do think we have a lot of good, strong college athletes who don't experience what it is to be in the US national team because of their academic pathways or so forth. But if we can say, okay, you've just graduated college, come and do an internship with us, or even during college, come and join in somehow and get that exposure and that experience. Because I really think we just don't know. Like, I talk to my athletes here and they're all thinking about a college, even to play at college. They never even think about playing for the USA team. It doesn't enter their thoughts, because the college is so prevalent. But if we can get our college coaches to say, you know what, I'm going to support my college players and help them on a high performance pathway, be it as an athlete and then as a coach, I think that goes a long way.
Makes sense. Makes sense. Okay, so we're almost talking for an hour and a half here, so that's already way over the time that we budgeted for this. So let me allow me to finish up with the final question for all of you, and maybe start with Katrina and end with Joy on this one. But Katrina, what would be your final message of encouragement for women to become a coach?
There's two parts. The first one is the jumping in and having a go, and if you enjoy it, then chances are you can and coach higher than what you're doing. So jump in both feet and have a go. The second one is, don't be afraid to network. I don't think it's a particularly strong piece for women, but if you think about it as just going for a coffee, building your networks, building connections, talking to people, you'll find the right role for yourself as well that way also. So don't be afraid to ask people for help. Go for a coffee and a chat, and you never know where that kind of thing can lead.
Janneke, same question.
I think the same. Just have a go. I'm a strong believer that it always, if you want to do it, just try. And if you fail, it's okay. I think it's the last thing maybe that I've learned as a player, but even more so as a coach. Yeah, you will fail. It doesn't mean you're a failure. Just, if you want to do it, just do it. And if it doesn't work out, you have the experience and you'll be great at something else.
Yeah, exactly. Veronica, what's the message for women around the world who want to be in coaching to come to the US and try a coaching role in one of those colleges there?
I agree. Just do it. Reach out, find the networks, reach out to the college coaches. And I also think we, as women, we need to look at what we do well. We often look at what we're not doing, but if we can just look at what do we do well, what can we bring to the coaching environment? Even if you think I'm not technically there, what else can I bring? Because we have so much to give to this great sport, and the technical piece we can learn. We have it's our inherent femaleness that we can bring that gives so much love and support to these young women.
Mm-hmm. Joy, you have the final word for today.
Oh la la. First, I was really happy to hear all what was said today. So thank you, Ernst, for the initiative. I think it's to dare to try, and what was said before, to be daring and dare to fail and stand up again and learn from it and bring your superpowers, because we all, as human beings, we all have superpowers. To believe in yourself enough and your competences that you're going to bring something really special, something unique. It's not linked to your gender, it's linked to who you are.
Yeah, absolutely. Okay, guys, thanks very much for sharing your insights with us, sharing the knowledge, as we also say here at thehockeyside.com. It's been a pleasure talking to you. We hope that we get many more female coaches to be enthusiastic about a role in high performance hockey, who have learned from your experience here. So thank you for that, and bye bye, everybody.
Bye bye.
Thank you. Bye bye.